Alright guys, in this video we're going to be talking about quotes and how you can use quotes to make your paper stronger and how to correctly use quotes within your paper.
For those who don't know, those are quotes.
There you go, quotes.
Okay, so as far as quotes go, they're a little bit different from paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is when that you've taken text that you've read it and you've taken notes on it and then you've written information from that text but you've restated it in your own words. So most of the time
you should be paraphrasing.
You're paraphrasing from sources.
You're taking their ideas and writing it in your own words. You're analyzing it. You're gathering facts and evidence on it.
But it's not your ideas. It's actually ideas from the text, and you're just restating it in different ways. So when you use a quotation, you actually use a specific section directly from the text. So you're taking it word for word.
So like if the author says it and you just can't say it any better, and you put it in quotation marks.
So when you take something word for word, you want to make sure that you give credit to that person, so you have to use quotation marks. And we'll show you how to punctuate that correctly now.
Okay, so sometimes an author says it best, we just said that, and what you use in their words, that's the direct quote. So when you take a line out of the reading and you put it in quotation marks. Quotes can do a lot of good things. They provide direct evidence, so like if you're using statistical numbers or that kind of thing, they can change things up. They like make your language a little more varied in your paper.
So sometimes if you're writing all over paraphrasing just gets a little stale. It's like the same thing.
Stick a quote in there, kind of changes things up, and then it also validates or makes the source that you're using seem really reliable.
So it can show that the source you're using is valid. Okay, so here's how you do it. There's a couple of rules when you're adding quotes to your writing. So all you have to do is select the section of the text you want to use word for word, and then you got to put it into the sentence. And there's a couple of rules as far as how you would do this with punctuation to make it work. So the first rule is periods and commas go inside the quotation marks. So in my example, you can see that there's a section of this it's taken directly from the text. The section engagement is the key to student success. That's word for word from the text.
Dr. Burns said it.
And then we have to put the period to end the sentence inside the quote. That's how you do periods and commas. They always go inside the quotation marks. Question marks are a little bit different. With question marks, it follows logic. So if it is part of the quote, it does go inside of the quotation marks. Otherwise, it goes outside. So this is what I mean. So Jefferson once said, "What is the meaning of life?"
So Jefferson said that, so it's in a quote.
So the question mark pertains to what Jefferson said. Therefore, it goes inside the quotation marks. However, this next one, do you agree with the saying, "All's fair in love and war"?
All's fair in love and war is the author saying it. So now the question mark goes on the outside because you're asking the question.
So yeah, so question marks are a little trickier. It only goes inside the quotation marks if it's actually part of the quote itself.
Part of what the author is saying.
Yep.
Okay? And if it's what you're saying about what the author is saying, then it goes outside.
Next up, if a quote contains a quote, I know this could blow your mind. A quote itself might contain a quote inside of it. Like you wanted to use a section of the text and the author quoted something in that section of the text, you'd actually have to use single quotation marks
inside the double quotation marks. Woo!
So the example here, Joseph Jones was never a man who yearned for greater things. Yearned being directly the word that was in quotation marks already.
From the original author.
And you've selected this. So you had to put their quotation marks in single so that yours can be in double.
Does that make sense? It should.
I don't know.
I hope it does. If it doesn't, come see us.
But that's kind of crazy. But that's what the single quotation marks are for. Then fourth, when quoting a piece of text with a grammar or spelling error, this probably does not happen very often. But especially when you're using like a primary source document.
When you're using like the Lewis and Clark journals that we did, like
every word spelled wrong.
Every word is because the guys writing the journals weren't really caring about their spelling when they were in the middle of the boonies writing with feather pens.
So
they were feather pens.
Yeah,
Come
feather
on.
pen you can spell anything you want wrong. But anyway,
give them credit for writing with those feather pens.
You don't fix the error. Instead, you put in brackets the word sick, which is a Latin term for I think as is, next to the error to point out that the error is in the original text. It's not your error. So the original
author spelled the word wrong, you didn't spell the word wrong.
So, for example, Mr. Johnson says of the experience, "It's made me reconsider the existence of extraterrestrials." Extraterrestrials is spelt incorrectly, so if I wanted to quote that, I'd put sick, so that way my teacher didn't say, hey, why'd you spell extraterrestrials wrong?
You say, no, Mr. Johnson spelled it wrong.
You don't want to fix the original text. You want to just point out the fact that you realize it's spelled wrong or grammatically incorrect.
But that was the way the original author did it.
Yep. Okay, one last rule for today. Rule 5. If your quotation is longer than 3 lines, so it would take more than 3 lines of the Word document, you don't do it the same way at all. In fact, you don't even use quotation marks anymore.
You just indent the whole quote. So if you're taking an entire paragraph somebody, which hopefully you wouldn't really do unless it was like a big, long, huge research paper. You're probably not going to do this very often, especially in 8th grade. But you would take the whole paragraph and just indent it. And then in brackets at the bottom, write the author and the page of the source that you got it from.
Yeah, so you don't use the quote. You instead skip a line and then indent the entire quote. So you see this is the author's writing. And then here is where they wanted to put the quote, and it's more than 3 lines. So the whole quote was indented. And then they would actually just skip another line and then go back to writing as usual after the end of the quote. So the quote would actually be, instead of in quotation marks, it would just be off.
It's like it's off little indented, a paragraph within a paragraph, basically.
Okay, so let's practice this now. We're not going to have you practice the indentation one. But there's 3 things that I want you to practice. So you're going to include all or part of the following statements in a practice sentence. So you're going to write a practice sentence and then take part of this to include into your sentence and quote it. So for this one, research done by Dr. Burns shows that schools with uniforms have 76% less incidents of bullying. Use part of this sentence in your sentence and use the correct quotation punctuation. Same thing with this one. And then number 3, you can see that I've already put this in quotation marks, so I really want you to practice putting this in single quotation marks in your own double quotation mark.
So single and double quotation marks. And if you want to get really fancy, I'd like you to practice one of those where you actually turn it into a question somehow. So you make the question out of the fact.
That way you can practice the question mark
quotation.
Okay, so do that now. You finish the quotation video.
Ready, set, go.